Hello, welcome to God Day. I'm Dr. Sarah Tunn. Do you have a tendency to live from crisis to crisis? Or from challenge to challenge? I want to challenge you today to live not from crisis to crisis, but from challenge to challenge. It all depends on our point of view. Our point of view depends on our attitude. So, let's learn how to live not from crisis to crisis, but from challenge to challenge. I know how to be abased, and I know how to abound. Everywhere and in all things I have learnt both to be full and to be hungry, both to abound and to suffer need. I can do all things through Christ who gives me strength. That's from Philippians 4. And Paul also writes in Romans 1:16, "For I am not ashamed of the gospel of Christ, for it is the power of God to salvation for everyone who believes, for the Jew first and also the Greek." So, this can be a very short God day. We live from crisis to crisis or from challenge to challenge, depending on how we view our circumstances and who God is to us. What's our attitude going to be? We have a choice. We who are in Christ have all the tools, all the equipment, all the information, all we need to know to live riding the waves, walking on water, experiencing life as a challenge, not as a crisis. We have it all because the power of God has invited us to be a part of His plan and His purpose. And He doesn't make any mistakes. We can choose our attitude in every circumstance, every encounter, every situation. The world is getting darker, but we can shine brighter. When we know and trust God and know nothing is a surprise to Him, if we relinquish all our agenda to Him and trust Him, there's nothing to be anxious about, nothing to be fearful about, no crisis, only challenge. That's the mindset I challenge us all to today. First of all, life on earth is a training ground. I heard something recently that suggests that one reason that depression is on the rise is because we live in a fight or flight mode for far too long, and our bodies adapt to living in that. And I guess we kind of crash. We're in a biochemical state of emergency for so long that we cannot calm down. And so we sort of crash. And whether that is scientifically accurate or whether that is philosophically or psychologically completely accurate, I don't know. And I'm not purporting, that's not the sort of doctor title I've got. It's doctor of ministry, not doctor of medicine. But it seems to me that there's so much crisis, so much panic, so much fear and worry in our society, then yes, it's no wonder that some people just give up and are depressed because they can't live in that constant state of preparedness for disaster. Now, I like a little bit of stress, I admit. I am better under pressure. My focus is better. And so if there's no stress at all for a day or a short time, that's great. It's rest. But if it goes on for too long, my mind just wanders into negativity. So I like a little bit of stress. But life is a training ground, and I'm learning to enjoy rest without stress, because I'm getting older and I can be active for less time. And so I'm learning to allow stress to go. And as a result, challenges are something to enjoy, but even more so without stress. It's even more enjoyable. Romans 8:37 says, "We are more than conquerors through him who loved us." God gives us all the equipment we need through his word, through his spirit, through the truth of who he is in us. When we recognize, Jesus says, don't judge, and Jesus says, don't fear. Jesus says, I came that you'd have life abundantly. He's not dismissing the fact that things can go wrong. Disasters can happen. But first of all, the things that go wrong, who are they going wrong to? Who set the boundaries that said what is right or wrong? If we have an agenda, is that God's agenda? Because God's agenda is not going to go wrong. Maybe I set my own agenda and I'm running late and that's not convenient, so I get stressed. Perhaps that's what's going on. And so, through him who loved us, we can conquer any situation, any at all. In Philippians 4, Paul writes, I can do all things through Christ who gives me strength. Well, what sorts of things? Weddings, lovely. New births, exciting. New job, intriguing and challenging. Loss of life, loss of friendship, loss of marriage through death or divorce, losing a child through drugs or death or disagreement. These are tragic things that affect us powerfully. How do we get through them? First, we know we will get through them. And next, we know we have to go through the process. And third, we actually endure until we come out the other side. But whatever is thrown our way, when we trust Jesus, truly trust him, when our lives are surrendered to him truly, we know there's nothing that's going to come our way that's going to destroy us. And if we die, though we don't seek it, we will be with him. So we can't lose unless we think we can lose. And we can't lose unless we're trying to hold on to something we're not meant to hold on to. Well, so much for tragedy then. What about surprises? Have you ever been surprised by someone you didn't want to see? Surprised by a party you didn't want to join? Surprised when somebody rear ends the back of your car? Surprise that we don't want. Well, how do we cope? What would Jesus do in a surprise situation? Was he surprised when Judas kissed him? Was he surprised when Lazarus died? Was he surprised when his mother said, "They're out of wine"? When you walk with God, whether something happens you expect or not, there are no surprises. You're not caught off guard. You live life expecting the unexpected. You live life knowing that there will be surprises, but they won't faze you. You might not know what's going to happen, but you know something new is going to happen, so you expect it. So much for surprises, unwanted surprises. What about disappointments? Are you at the center of God's will? Do you trust He loves you? Then whatever difficulty you're faced with, He knows. He's allowed it. He doesn't want illness or a job loss. He doesn't want disappointments, but He uses them to shape us and to mold us. There's a lovely song about the potter's hand. The potter makes us and molds us and shapes us and allows our circumstances to affect us. And if we allow them to, we will come forth shining like the sun. The loss of a job or the loss of a job offer can be really disappointing. You set your sights on it and it doesn't work out the way you plan. Trust the Lord is in everything. What about illnesses? Your own or someone else's? I'm not sure which is worse. When it's a really serious illness and you want them to be healed and they're not. I'm not a very good patient. I'm not a very good nurse. But as I experience illness or someone else's, my own or someone else's, I learn patience. I learn charity. I learn how to serve better and better. And Jesus was the best servant. So of course I want to learn. Not that I wish illness on anybody or on myself. But in all things, we are more than conquerors. What about opportunities when you're scared or nervous? You've got to climb that mountain peak because there's something up there you want to find. Soon after I became a Christian, I had an audition for a musical play. And I had a sore throat and a lot of nerves. I later found out it was bronchitis. I didn't know at the time, probably just as well. So I trundled off. It was winter. Again, I mention it because of the bronchitis. And I was a baby believer, but a verse came to my mind. I can do all things through Christ who gives me strength. And I whispered it aloud as I walked to the audition. And I got the part, in spite of the bronchitis. And I've never forgotten that, because Jesus gave me the opportunity to shine. Jesus gave me the courage to shine. And I did. Our life situations are varied. How can we live in all situations? again, I mentioned attitude. And if we think positively, I don't mean fancifully, oh, I think positively that I'm going to get the biggest yacht in the world, and there it is. No, I mean when situations are difficult, we turn them on our heads. What is the opportunity at hand? So we break our leg and we're in crutches and we can't drive the car. We're stuck at home. What's the opportunity? Reading the Bible more, praying more, going to my local cafe and hanging out more so I get to know more people. Ministry can be anywhere, anytime, anything. And with a broken leg, it's not impossible. And we can live with that positive attitude no matter what our circumstances and see the light at the end of the tunnel, the sun through the clouds, because we can do all things through Christ who gives us strength. So we can ask the Lord to help us see things from a different point of view, a different perspective. Come up above the circumstance and look down and see a solution if it's difficult. And we can have an attitude of gratitude. Going back to Philippians 4. I know how to be abased and I know how to abound. Everywhere and in all things I've learned to be full and to be hungry, to abound and to suffer need. I can do all things through Christ because he's given me the tools. Every day I'm grateful. We can list the things we're grateful for. It might be a long list, it might be short. But we can be thankful and say thank you to God and thank him that he saved us. That's a starting point. Thank you that he saved other people you know. Thank you for those other people in your life. Start thanking God for particular people. And all of a sudden, you've been thanking him for half an hour. And I come to people now because we have all kinds of relationships. Some might be easy, some might be difficult. We can thank the Lord for the difficult ones because that's pruning us and shaving off the hard bits of us. And in Hebrews 10, the writer says, do not forsake meeting together. So even when we may not feel comfortable with a group, we maybe picked the wrong home group or picked the wrong church, we're in a place of worship to the Lord. So it can't be all wrong. There might be theological differences, or there might be somebody there we knew from long ago and we're not comfortable with. Whatever the obstacle might be, the obstacle is an opportunity to grow. The obstacle is an opportunity to give to someone else. Don't forsake meeting together, because we can rejoice that much better with others. And because God will use other people to do things to us and for us and in us. And he will use us to do things to other people, to them and for them and in them. Now, there are circumstances where there's spiritual warfare. But I want you to catch this. Yes, Satan is a nasty enemy, and he is real. And spiritual warfare is real. But we can get so caught up in spiritual battle that we miss that the Lord is providing an opportunity through that which is difficult. Sometimes obstacles are spiritual battles. Sometimes they're opportunities. And sometimes they're both. What if you are asked to lead a group in something and there's one person there that irks you, challenges you in nasty ways, second guesses you, makes things difficult. And without that difficulty, things would flow more easily. Absolutely. But then the rest of the group is watching the two of you and the dynamics and how you cope. And through that, teaching each other, you are teaching the others how to cope in adversity. And anyway, we need to laugh with our brothers and sisters. And so making a statement, a joyful statement about the obstacle, can neutralize the obstacle by God's grace. We need to choose whether we're going to focus on spiritual warfare or on growth. Because we can tear things down, but those might be the things that are meant to build us up. We're not meant to be victims, but we are meant to overcome. Revelations 2, he who overcomes. Revelations 3. Revelations 21. Lots of he who overcomes. He who overcomes receives the blessing. So sometimes the spiritual battles that we need to fight are to grow us. And sometimes the things we think are spiritual battles are actually opportunities. We need to discern the two. Is this a battle you need to fight through prayer? Or is this an opportunity you need to embrace and learn from? That's the question. Is this a spiritual battle? Through prayer I need to fight it? Or is this a spiritual dilemma and working through it, perhaps with other people, will bring me growth that I need for the next situation? Life is a challenge. We don't need to live from crisis to crisis. That's when we're too short of time and looking at life as though our agenda needs to be completed. Rather, look at life as a challenge. And from challenge to challenge, things we face, and in between are the valleys of rest and relaxation. We can overcome every challenge with an attitude of challenge rather than crisis. Because you see, when we are in crisis, it's because we think the enemy is winning, that we're losing. We lose sight of God. We lose sight of love and life in that fear. Rather, when we're in an attitude of challenge, we're not overwhelmed by our circumstances. We haven't been pulled down by the circumstances, but we've been buoyed up to rise over those circumstances. Remember how perfect love casts out fear? Love the circumstance, love the challenge, and you won't be afraid. God keeps putting things in our pathway to help us to grow. And when we know that, oh, the tire's flat, it's raining, this is inconvenient, this is a challenge, what am I going to do about it? See, fear is torment. Perfect love casts out fear, for fear is torment. But the tormentor, the enemy, doesn't know the outcome. God does. And when we follow God, we'll get to the outcome without the crisis. We can trust God with all our heart, soul, mind, and strength, just as we love Him. We can trust the Lord. Proverbs 3, 5 and 6 says, trust the Lord with all your heart and lean not on your own understanding. In all your ways acknowledge him, and he will make your path straight. He will turn that path of a crisis into the path of a challenge when we trust him. Torment is of the enemy, but we don't need to deal with torment at all when we know that the outcome belongs to God. We can rest as we're trusting God, as that path is straightening out. We can rest as we walk. We can live the life God has for us. You know, he's got a prescription for us, or a set of prescriptions. And we just need to take the prescriptions, the challenges, so that we grow. If we want specific outcomes, then fear can get in, because we're trying to orchestrate our circumstances. When we trust God in all circumstances and we don't have an agenda, there's no room for fear, because we don't know what's going to happen. But we're not afraid, because we're in God. We're in the palm of his hand. Wanting God's outcomes allows us to live the surrendered life, free from anxiety, free from our will and the fear that the enemy can rob us. Wanting God's outcome allows us to live the surrendered life without any fear. We know God won't rob us, and hope won't disappoint us. Now listen, Romans 5:5. Now hope does not disappoint us, because the love of God has been poured out in our hearts by the Holy Spirit who was given to us. We can cast our burdens onto Jesus and allow the outcomes to be God's. As it says in Hebrews 10:12, looking unto Jesus, the author and finisher of our faith. The way to live from challenge to challenge, rather than crisis to crisis, is to live fully surrendered, trusting our hearts and desires and needs will be met by God, rather than building up what our hearts and desires and making a list and saying, God, will you give me this list? And says, instead, Lord, what is your list? Let me walk in that list. Psalm 112 says in verse 7, he will not be afraid of evil tidings. His heart is steadfast, trusting in the Lord. Our journey, our challenge is to grow in trust of the Lord. Trust in the Lord, and let's spur each other on. Bless you. Bye for now.